Paige's tiny voice barely rose above the howling wind. Daddy said we do not belong here anymore. For a heartbeat. My lungs simply stopped working. Rain turned to freezing sleet against my thin hospital scrubs. Biting into my skin like shattered glass, my 4-year-old daughter sat huddled on our covered porch, shivering violently next to a packed overnight bag adorned with cartoon princesses. Warm, inviting yellow light spilled onto the wet concrete from the dining room window. Inside, a perfectly catered Thanksgiving turkey sat in the center of the mahogany table. Marcus raised a crystal glass of expensive wine, offering a toast. Beside him, his mother Catherine threw her head back in roaring laughter, while a younger woman in a silk dress proudly poured hot gravy over their plates. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket, vibrating against my frozen hip. A text from Marcus lit up the cracked screen. You do not get to barge in and ruin our holiday just because your 18-hour shift ended early. Paige needs to learn your choices have consequences. I looked up. Marcus met my gaze right through the rain-streaked glass. He offered a slow, incredibly smug smile, reached out, and slid the heavy brass deadbolt locked. I swallowed the thick bile rising in my throat. I wrapped my heavy, waterproof winter coat tightly around Paige's shaking shoulders, scooped her lightweight frame into my arms, and walked straight back into the freezing storm. The heater in my car blasted on full power, but my 32-year-old bones felt like they were forged from solid ice. I am a pediatric emergency room nurse. I spend my entire life pulling fragile people back from the absolute brink of death. Panic is a luxury I simply cannot afford. I drove us in complete silence to a quiet, unassuming hotel on the edge of Charlotte, North Carolina. Paige fell asleep against my chest the very moment we stepped into the warm room, her small, cold hands clutching the collar of my uniform. I laid her gently on the mattress, pulled the heavy white comforter over her, and sat in the dark. The reality of the last 10 years washed over me in crushing waves. I had worked double shifts, skipped weekends, and sacrificed holidays to fund every single one of Marcus's failed business ventures. I paid the heavy mortgage. I bought the organic groceries. I kept the lights on while he played the role of a misunderstood entrepreneur. They drained my bank accounts for a decade. But tonight, they tried to break my spirit. My phone screen lit up once again in the darkness. This time, it was a saved voicemail from his mother, Catherine, left earlier in the week. I pressed play, letting her voice fill the quiet, sterile room. A real woman would never leave her husband alone on a holiday. You deserve someone who puts you first. Marcus. Catherine had not just tolerated the mistress in my home, she orchestrated the entire replacement. She helped pack my 4-year-old daughter's bag and set her out in the freezing rain just so they could eat their holiday turkey in absolute peace. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it burned away any lingering sadness I held. Pity vanished instantly. A cold, absolute resolve took its place. They thought they were punishing me. They forgot I spend 12 hours a day dealing with massive trauma. I know exactly how to stop bleeding. And I know exactly how to cut a toxic limb completely off. 3 days later, I sat across from Morgan, a family law attorney known throughout the city for her absolute, unyielding ruthlessness. The expensive leather chair squeaked as she turned her silver laptop toward me. We were not just looking at simple infidelity or a broken marriage. We were looking at a major federal crime. Marcus had not just cheated on me, he had stolen our daughter's entire future. Morgan pointed a manicured finger at a scanned document on the screen. Marcus had submitted a physical distribution form to liquidate Paige's entire college fund. $85,000. Gone in a single afternoon. He forged my signature on the thick stack of paperwork. He had his drinking buddy at a local car dealership illegally notarize the fraudulent document. Then, he had the massive physical check mailed to a private shipping box he had secretly opened under my name. The money was immediately funneled into a fake corporate account created exclusively to fund a lifestyle brand for Erica, the younger woman pouring gravy in my dining room. He willingly swallowed a massive federal tax penalty just to steal from his own flesh and blood. The betrayal shifted instantly from a tragic romance to irrefutable. Highly documented federal mail and wire fraud. He also maxed out 3 separate credit cards in my name to fund his new, lavish lifestyle. He left a paper trail so incredibly wide it could pave a major highway. I stared at the poorly forged signature. My hands rested flat on the cool mahogany desk. They broke my heart on that freezing porch. But sitting in this pristine office, I realized I held the absolute power to destroy his entire life. Marcus and Catherine completely mistook my silence for submission. For 3 agonizing weeks, my phone exploded with demanding, arrogant texts. "Stop acting crazy and sign the house over to me. You are embarrassing yourself. Be a mature adult and let us move on." I ignored every single message. When a major artery is severed in the trauma ward, you do not panic or scream at the wound. You apply a tourniquet. You wait for the blood pressure to drop. Marcus conveniently forgot one massive detail in his arrogant little fantasy. He forgot that the house we lived in was not a marital asset. My late grandfather left that beautiful brick house to me long before Marcus ever put a cheap ring on my finger. My name was the absolute only name on the deed. While Marcus arrogantly planned a lavish New Year's Eve party using my stolen credit cards, Morgan and I worked deep in the shadows. We took the text message Marcus sent on Thanksgiving. The exact message where he proudly admitted to locking a 4-year-old child out in the freezing rain. Straight to a county judge. The judge took one look at the evidence and issued an immediate emergency protective order for extreme child endangerment. We let Marcus buy the expensive imported champagne. We let him invite all his wealthy, deeply judgmental friends. We let him build his perfect little illusion of total victory. Silence is the ultimate weapon against a crashing system. Let them think they won the war. Right until the exact moment the floor collapses beneath their feet. New Year's Eve arrived with biting cold. At exactly 11:45, I pulled into my own familiar driveway. I walked up the concrete front steps, but I was not alone. 3 armed county sheriff's deputies walked right beside me, their boots heavy on the frost. I pushed the unlocked front door wide open. The loud bass of the music pounded through the hallway. Dozens of formally dressed guests held crystal glasses, laughing and celebrating the incoming year. I stepped directly into the living room. The music died instantly. Marcus froze in place. A glass of expensive champagne stopped halfway to his mouth. Erica dropped her silk napkin onto the floor. Catherine stood up from the velvet sofa, her face entirely draining of color. Marcus stepped forward, puffing out his chest, desperately trying to play the victim in front of his audience. "You need to leave right now," he demanded, his voice shaking. One of the towering deputies stepped past me and shoved a thick manila folder directly into Marcus's chest. "You are being served with an immediate eviction notice and an emergency protective order," the deputy stated loudly, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You have exactly 10 minutes to vacate these premises, or you will be placed in handcuffs for trespassing and child endangerment." The silence in the room was absolutely deafening. Shocked whispers erupted among their wealthy friends. Marcus stammered, looking around desperately for an excuse. His arrogant facade completely crumbling, Erica grabbed her designer purse, her hand shaking so violently she dropped her keys. Catherine began to scream at the top of her lungs, demanding the police arrest me instead. The deputies completely ignored her tantrums. They marched all three of them straight toward the front door. I stood perfectly still by the warm fireplace. I watched Marcus, Erica, and Catherine get forced out into the freezing, icy driveway in their expensive, thin party clothes. I closed the heavy wooden door, slid the brass deadbolt locked, and finally took a deep, unrestricted breath. A full month later, Marcus tried his final, truly desperate strike. Hospital security pulled me out of the pediatric ward in the middle of a chaotic shift. An anonymous tip had been called in to the state medical board. The tipster claimed I was actively stealing highly regulated pediatric narcotics. It was a deeply calculated move to destroy my nursing license, strip away my income, and win full custody of Paige out of pure spite. Marcus thought he was a criminal mastermind. He forgot he was dealing with an emergency room nurse who handles strict medical protocols every single day. I marched straight to the administration office alongside the security director. We pulled the biometric scanner logs from the hospital medication dispensers. My digital fingerprints proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that I had never even accessed those specific drugs. I was completely cleared in 10 minutes. But I certainly did not stop there. The fraudulent credit cards Marcus opened were still legally in my name. That meant I had full legal access to the billing statements. I pulled my own credit report, bypassed the security questions because I knew Marcus used Catherine's maiden name for every password, and logged into the online portal. I found a distinct charge for a virtual private network subscription purchased on the exact day the fake tip was submitted. The digital protocol address traced right back to the cheap router in Marcus's new, cramped apartment. I compiled the hospital logs and the credit card statements into a flawless, thick binder. I drove straight to Morgan's office and dropped it heavily on her desk. She looked at the organized evidence and smiled a terrifying smile. "I am a family lawyer, Brooke," she said smoothly. "You already have full custody and your house. But this is a federal felony. I am sending this binder straight to the district attorney today. My job here is done. Go destroy him." 3 days later, local police kicked down the door of Marcus's apartment. He was arrested for federal identity theft, massive wire fraud, and filing a false police report. Erica packed her bags and fled the state the very moment she saw the flashing red and blue lights of the squad cars. Catherine was left sitting on the dirty curb, completely destitute, sobbing hysterically as her golden son was shoved roughly into the back of a police cruiser. I drove past them, rolled my window up tight, and never looked back. 5 full years have passed since that freezing Thanksgiving night. I am sitting comfortably in my warm, bright living room. The fireplace is crackling softly. Paige is 8 years old now, sitting on the thick rug, drawing colorful pictures with a box of bright crayons. She is completely safe. She is deeply loved. She never asks about the people who locked her in the cold. She only knows a life filled with warmth, laughter, and absolute security. The federal judge sentenced Marcus to 6 years in state prison, firmly ordering him to pay back every single penny of the $85,000 he stole in restitution. His reputation in our community was entirely vaporized. His former business partners and friends completely cut ties the moment the fraud became public record. Catherine tried to reach out to me just once. She left a rambling, tearful voicemail, begging to see her precious granddaughter. She told me she was still family. She told me she was so incredibly sorry for everything. I listened to the entire message, entirely devoid of anger, entirely devoid of pity. Then, I hit delete. I did not call her back. I did not write a letter. I did not scream into the receiver. I just erased her from our universe completely. People like Marcus and Catherine rely exclusively on your emotional breakdown. They desperately want you to scream and cry so they can point their fingers and call you crazy to anyone who will listen. When you actively deny them that reaction, when you respond only with documented, cold, unshakable facts, they panic and destroy themselves from the inside out. I learned 3 vital rules through this incredible fire. Rule number 1. Silence is the ultimate predator. Never interrupt an arrogant person while they are actively handing you the physical and digital evidence for their own destruction. Every mean text Marcus sent, every stolen dollar he wired, was just another foot of rope he used to hang himself. When you stay quiet, the guilty mind becomes careless. They mistake your composure for weakness. And that is exactly when they make their fatal mistake. Rule number 2. Forgiveness does not mean avoiding consequences. You can completely heal your own heart. You can find absolute peace without letting abusers escape the legal, financial, and criminal gravity of their atrocious actions. Society often pressures victims to simply let things go to keep the peace. But true peace requires justice. You do not owe a toxic person a soft landing when they pushed you off a cliff. Holding someone accountable in a court of law is not bitterness. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. Rule number 3. A child's peace is worth far more than a mother's ego. My calculated revenge was never about hurting Marcus. It was never about proving I was the smarter person in the room. It was about permanently amputating a highly toxic bloodline to protect Paige from a lifetime of manipulation. Blood does not make you family. Loyalty, safety, consistent care, and deep respect make you family. You are completely allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. Even if you share a last name with them, you are allowed to lock the door and never open it again. Trust is earned through actions. It is never owed by default. I built a permanent fortress of peace for my daughter, and no one will ever lock us out again. I am Brooke, and we are finally free. Have you ever had to use absolute silence to defeat a skilled manipulator? Have you ever walked away from deeply toxic family members to protect your own sanity and peace? Drop your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Subscribe for more stories about turning deep pain into untouchable power. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are asking, why on earth did she just turn around and walk away from that freezing porch? Why did she not break the glass? And why in the world did she fund that man's failed businesses for an entire decade? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside. But let us talk about the psychology of toxic relationships. Psychologists call it the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. When you are tied to a narcissist or a toxic family dynamic, they do not treat you terribly 100% of the time. Every now and then, they give you a tiny crumb of hope, a decent weekend, a hollow apology, a promise to finally step up and be a real partner. You keep pulling the lever, working those grueling 18-hour shifts, paying the bills, hoping for that jackpot of a normal, happy family. Brooke was not stupid or weak. She was simply conditioned to keep trying. But locking a 4-year-old child in the freezing sleet, that was the moment the machine broke, and the illusion completely shattered. Once that illusion broke, Brooke executed an absolute masterclass in financial and legal self-defense. Let us break down her smartest moves so you can use them if you ever find yourself in a similar nightmare. First, the audit strategy. Most people catch a cheating spouse and immediately focus all their rage on the affair. Brooke focused on the paperwork. She and her lawyer dug deep into the finances and uncovered the forged signatures and the stolen $85,000 from the college fund. Scammers and manipulators absolutely hate a paper trail. By focusing on the hard data instead of the broken romance, she elevated a messy family dispute into a massive federal felony. Second, she understood the power of leveraging her assets. She knew the house was a premarital asset inherited from her grandfather. She did not waste her energy arguing with Marcus over text messages about who deserved to stay. She let him buy the expensive champagne. And then she used an emergency protective order to legally evict the parasites from her property. She used the law as a shield, not her emotions. Finally, she mastered the art of building the case. When Marcus tried to ruin her nursing license with a fake tip, she did not panic or beg the medical board to believe her. She used hospital biometric logs to prove her location. She pulled her own credit report to track his virtual private network purchase. She fought his emotional manipulation with cold, undeniable, time-stamped evidence. The ultimate lesson here is that calculated silence and hard strategy will always defeat screaming and chaos. You cannot negotiate with people who view your sacrifices as their absolute right. When they show you exactly who they are, believe them. Document everything. Freeze your credit. And protect your assets. Your peace of mind is your most valuable investment. Have you ever had to untangle your finances or your life from a manipulator? What was your smartest move? Drop your advice in the comments below to help someone who might be going through it right now. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for more street-smart strategies and stories of incredible survival.